welcome all of you. I want to welcome our panelists to the first inaugural episode of MediaCom's What's Next, which is a new format that we have developed in the last couple of weeks and launching it now, where we look under the microscope at how COVID has impacted various parts of the industry in which we're operating as marketers. And today we're gonna look under the microscope of the sports industry, which obviously has had a huge impact, like everyone else, with lots of canceled events and everything being put on hold for months for the last couple of months. So joining me on this session to discuss what's happened and how the industry is adjusting, I'm really privileged to have some great panelists with me today. So starting out, I don't know where he is on your screen, but very sharp looking with his suit and his jacket and shirt is Jonathan. Jonathan, say hello. Jonathan Kane from joining us from Liverpool. Jonathan is the Vice President of Global Partnership Sales. Has been with the club for a long time. Has been in the industry for a long time. So we'll have a really interesting perspective from what's happening at Liverpool, but also in terms of what's happening on the team side and what are some of the challenges that sports teams are currently having. I'm also pleased to welcome one of our former alumni, Cara Pelican, who is now Partnership Strategy Director at Formula E. Thank you, Cara, for joining us.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Okay, hopefully that wasn't Cara exited. And last but not least is Charlie Allen, who is the Global Brand Partnerships Director at ESL. Interesting for us to hear, Charlie, from you in terms of what's happening in the gaming space. Obviously, so much has been written about how what's happening in the gaming esports world as a result of I guess traditional sports coming to a halt. So it'd be interesting to hear your perspective. I do apologize that Ben Hollett from Adidas couldn't make it last minute because of a change of circumstances. But there's lots to cover. We've got a great panel. So without any further delay, let's get right to it. Charlie, let's kick off with you, if I may. You've obviously had to cancel several live ESL events now. How has COVID affected what you have done to continue to operate? Have you been able to capitalize on any additional brand conversations in the short term, and how have you sort of attracted have you been able to attract a broader suite of brands willing to have the conversation with you as a result of COVID?
Well, it's thanks, Misha. It's been a very tumultuous time for all of us. But the short answer to that is it's been certainly a time for reflection and a lot of interest from a lot of non-endemic brands out there in the world of sport and broader marketing spheres. It was crisis management for absolutely everybody in the events management business and activation business around February, March, and ourselves included. And it was a big upheaval for us to say, right, okay, these big global arena events just cannot happen now for the foreseeable. It started with Katowice in Poland in February. It had to be cancelled just last minute in the actual stadium. So we kept all the players and teams in the arena, but the audiences weren't allowed in there. It was quite incredibly eerie, but it all went online, and it has been all online since then. So all the online tournaments are happening with pundits in a studio, a little bit like we are now, and from wherever they are acting remotely to broadcast, still on Twitch and across YouTube and different platforms like that, but in a quite reduced form, where of course you're not having the interaction and the pyrotechnics and the fire and the fireworks and the music and all that sort of loud spectator crowd action, but it was all still happening online. So a lot of people were popping up and going, well, this is interesting. You seem to be the only people actually doing live entertainment within reason, of course. And certainly Formula One did their bit to raise the profile for esports, which is great. and thank the Lord that football's back. But it was a lot of interest from a lot of people that we had spoken to previously when it comes to brands. We're working obviously tirelessly to make sure we fulfill as much as we can for our current partners. The likes of course, for Intel and DHL and people at Vodafone and people like that, and Mercedes. It was tough because you want to fulfill as much as you can, but you're not having a big arena tournament event. Those will be back. But there was a lot of interest, and we had a lot of conversations. I thought, it was a little bit quiet and eerie, at the start of, March and April, but things started ramping up, and people started really getting in touch or responding to something they might not have, decided to deal with or find out more about in the world of esports and gaming. And yeah, it's pretty crazy busy.
Yeah, I bet. Jonathan, how about yourself? You've certainly been in the industry for a long time. We've known each other for many years, and we've seen many things happen, but probably nothing quite like this. And now that football's back, Charlie's just saying it's great to have football back. It is great to have. It's only a matter of time before you guys are crowned champions. So waiting for that. Talk us through some of the undertaking that's been required to get live football back in stadiums. I mean, Charlie mentioned the arenas. You're talking about, stadium that seats more than 50,000. It must feel pretty amazing to see Liverpool playing again. But what have been some of the challenges that you faced over the recent weeks, months, from a commercial perspective, and how have you sort of adapted and innovated in a way that you service your existing partners and perhaps looking at opportunities beyond the crisis?
Yeah, thanks, Misha. Yeah, great that football's back, but I guess that depends on which team you follow, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah,
I'm a Middlesbrough fan. I could have quite easily waited another couple of months given the way that they played on Saturday. But yeah, it's fantastic that football is back, and it's been a huge undertaking for us to get back in shape. There were times when it was touch and go, but thankfully, the decision to bring football back was taken at the highest levels of government. It was seen as being in the national interest, but it wasn't an easy path. Many meetings took place: Premier League, UEFA, European Club Association, and also there was the debate about whether games were going to be played at neutral venues or our home venues, and thankfully common sense prevailed. But in some ways, it's harder to put on a game behind closed doors than in front of a full stadium, because if you think about it, we've had years and years of developing operating plans and protocols, refining them. So, relatively smooth process putting on a game in front of 55,000 fans. But, we needed to develop new operating plans and protocols to put on games behind closed doors, and we only had a matter of weeks to do it. So it's been a huge undertaking, and hopefully, we'll see the fruits of that, or we will see the fruits of that on Wednesday when we play Crystal Palace. But for us, it's not just about the stadium. We're building a new training ground. Construction work was put on hold. Hopefully, we're moving in there in the next couple of months. We've got a 90,000 square foot distribution centre. There was new protocols that had to be put in place there. We've got retail stores. Obviously, we're opening those up again. So, it's lots going on, lots keeping our operations folk busy, and they've done an incredible job. But partnerships wise, we've not been sat on our hands, and in fact, in some ways, we've never been busier. We've developed or we've delivered 71, I think it's the latest count, 71 campaigns and activations during the lockdown period.
Incredible.
17 player and manager appearances, albeit remotely, and see with the technical challenges that brings with it. But it's really brought partnerships to the fore, because in the absence of football, partnership content activities fill the void. I think something like 70% of the content that we've published on our platforms has been partner led content. And the focus is, I think this is just symptomatic of the direction that we're heading in. And, you know, we bandy the word purpose around quite a lot, but a lot of the activities that our partners have been doing have been focused on well-being. You know, you look at the stuff that we've done with AXA. If anybody follows us on social media, you know, our very own Andreas Kormeyer doing his best, you know, Joe Wicks impression, delivering exercise classes for our fans presented by AXA, and you know, all of the stuff that we're doing with AXA, or that we've done with AXA over the lockdown period, I think delivered something like 8.5 million video views. So it's been brilliant for the partner. It's been brilliant for our fans. You know, Nivea Men, you'll have seen some of the stuff that we've done with them. Hopefully, you know, continuing the Dear Liverpool series, and in fact, the digital content that we produced with Nivea Men, with Jordan Henderson, sort of surprising a few fans who were going through a bit of a tough time in their life. They've actually used that content in their above the line advertising. They had some ad spots around our game against Everton last night, and so, you know, given the challenging conditions, you know, we've done a pretty good job, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you have as well. I mean, I think some of the stuff that you've been doing has been well documented recently as well. I've been reading about the activity, the amount of content you guys are putting out, and who's been most engaged. So I think it's obviously a very a tricky situation for anyone to find themselves in. But I think the way that you guys have adapted and reacted to deliver so much in such a short space of time is very impressive. So, you know, well done with that. And Cara, how about, you know, moving on to Formula E, you guys have announced your released your revised schedule last week. How have things evolved with your commercial partners? I mean, do you envisage a different way, you know, different approaches to partnerships in the sort of short to medium term? Is there anything you were doing along the lines of what Jonathan was mentioning over the last couple of minutes with your partners?
Yeah, so I think as both of the guys have touched on, the lockdown period obviously created a number of challenges, particularly for rights holders with regards to being able to deliver events in a traditional format. And I guess from Formula E's perspective, we were quite proactive in terms of identifying new opportunities outside of that traditional sporting space that would enable us to drive additional value for our commercial partners during lockdown. And I think one example of that was we hosted an 8-week esports series, which consisted of 2 grids. So one of our 24 racing drivers, which enabled us to have that sustained contact with our fans during lockdown. And then the second grid consisted of 24 esports experts and influencers, which allowed us to build credibility within the esports community. And we integrated all of our commercial partners through that product. So in terms of the actual race itself, through the broadcast, and then through content creation opportunities. And I think it was a huge success in that respect, not only in terms of the value that it delivered for our commercial partners, but also in terms of building our fan base out through the esports community. And then, as you touched on, obviously we are keen to go back racing, and we announced our updated season 6 schedule just last week. And obviously there's still a number of restrictions in place as a result of coronavirus. So again, it gives us an opportunity to do things differently. And I guess it's sort of in the spirit of Formula E to challenge the way that things are done. So we're definitely going to do things differently. So we're hosting a festival of racing in Berlin, which we'll use to close out the season. That will essentially consist of 6 races over 9 days. And it's never been done in Formula E history before. So we have a few surprises up our sleeves that not even our teams and drivers are aware of at this stage. So we certainly think that it will make for quite an interesting racing product. And we've worked closely with our commercial partners over the last couple of months to understand what their commercial objectives are, and making sure that we're executing that campaign against their specific brand and marketing objectives. And I think fundamentally, that's something that we'll look to continue over the coming weeks and months, and it will be really important, I guess, to be innovative and creative and look for additional opportunities outside of a traditional sporting environment in order to drive additional value for commercial partners.
Great, great. Well, we're excited. We're excited to hear what you've got up your sleeve.
You'll have to
Jonathan, going back to you very quickly. One of the things that I know that we've been talking about for the last couple of months, but this conversation has been accelerated a lot due to the virus is this idea of digital transformation. Not anything new, but certainly if organizations were thinking about it before, they don't have a choice now, perhaps, right? Because it's just the situation has forced them to think about how they engage with people going forward. Understanding the fan on the deeper level, delivering the types of content, continue to deliver the type of content that people want is going to be imperative, not just to keeping your fans happy, but keeping obviously your commercial partners happy. How important do you see your digital and OTT channels as direct, as direct to fan platforms moving forward? And what do you, and is there anything that you guys are putting in place to grow these platforms and really make digital the sort of core component of what you're doing?
Yeah, I'll break that down a few bits and pieces in there. So in terms of our approach to digital transformation, we don't really see it as a thing. It's just something that we do. We behave like we are digital. We're not kind of standing on a 10-meter diving board, waiting for the right moment to jump in. We're fully splashing around. And I think, where we're at is that, our primary objective is to adjust and pivot to what our fans and what our partners want. So, to give you a couple of recent examples, TikTok, whilst it was part of our suite of products that we offer to partners, obviously, TikTok generally has gone through the roof in terms of the number of people, downloading the app in the aftermath of going into lockdown. So we had to pivot slightly to ramp up our efforts on that platform. We were getting a clamoring for being online, and we announced last week Line Japan rather than being on just discovering the internet. We've formed a partnership with Line Japan now, and we're going to be doing a ton of stuff on there. So and then the next phase for us is really drilling down and understanding our fans more. We've got, I guess there's a number of different phases to this, but really starting to understand our fans' consumption patterns and behavior, and being able to tailor activations and secure partners based on those consumption patterns and behaviors as well. But it's no good just seeking to understand more about the fans. You've got to have the technology platforms in place and that are going to enable you to harvest that data. You've got to have the products and services in place that are going to attract fans in the first place. So, we're very fortunate that we've got a CMO. His name's Drew Crisp. He joined us from IBM, so you can sort of guess where we're heading on that front. From a channel perspective, I think this last 3 months has taught us so much about what we do. If you look at Facebook and how we're performing in terms of the volume of fans who are watching videos for a minute or more, I guess just Facebook's holy grail. I think in April it was over 40 million 1-minute video views that we generated on Facebook and Instagram, which is phenomenal. And I think that's testament to having a rock solid digital strategy. Got to plug our digital team. Just won the Drum social media of the media team of the year. And if any of them are watching, hopefully they'll buy me a pint for mentioning that. But we've made some big investments, and hopefully we're reaping the rewards, and we're able to create really compelling partnerships and generate a significant return on investment for our partners.
Yeah, Yeah, it's been interesting to follow. Obviously, we worked a little bit with you on that, so it's phenomenal to see sort of where you're getting to now. Charlie, and of course, you don't have to worry about digital transformation because the sport is, the area you're in is digital first, and many would argue that perhaps the biggest winner, if you can have a winner out of such an unfortunate situation, is been the gaming industry. Yeah. Everything about the space has been up. Every statistic you look at has been up. The viewership is up. More people are gaming. You've had some record numbers as well. How do you see now that the real, I will say real sport, but now that sports, not virtual sport, but sport has returned in the real world? How do you see things? Do you see esports continuing in the same vein, the same growth, or being sort of mainstream as part of being mainstream entertainment, or how do you see things?
Well, it's been coming for a while now, Misha. It's been bubbling away, and esports refuses to go away. Everyone will be aware, of course, that obviously you have the Premier League on Sky Sports last season, and obviously the recent BBC announcement for League of Legends, which is exciting. Ourselves, it's just been, like you say, just unbelievable. I mean, the video plays that obviously Jonathan was talking about for our ESL Pro League, which is like the Champions League of Counter-Strike, if you like, which happened in April when everyone was just bedding down and sitting online and watching. We were 157 million video plays.
It was record, right? Was it record? Yeah.
That's 79% up from what it was last year, and it's just insane. We measure things in cumulative views, and of course, like Jonathan mentioned, video plays and hours watched. These people are piling online to watch our tournaments in Counter-Strike, obviously, first person shooter, and then they've got Dota 2, and mobile has just gone through the roof for us because we're doing mobile 5G tournaments now, where people could be playing on their mobile at home instead of our tournaments on stage still on a mobile. But some exciting stuff on there. The telecoms industry and brands and sponsors have been really actively talking to us right across the board, because when you've got 135 million people watching on Twitch for your tournaments, it's just it's insane, and that's from China to the US, right across Europe, Russia, and that's for Twitch, YouTube, and those are the sorts of platforms that we have, Facebook too. So that hike in people sitting down and watching and playing, a lot of them are playing more, because our story at ESL is zero to hero and everybody can be somebody.
Yeah.
The journey to pro is very short compared to, let's say, elite football or Formula One or Formula E. These guys can be heroes of tomorrow. Just take the Fortnite World Cup that everyone knows about last summer, 15-year-old boy becoming a millionaire. Same goes for ESL tournaments. These are big international tournaments that are still happening online, and the viewership is crazy, as you said, and some of the figures I've mentioned. But it's showing no signs of slowing down. So to answer your question, Misha, I think it's only a good thing that esports is going mainstream. We're not going to fool ourselves. It's not as big as football or Formula One or those sorts of sports, but we're there to compete. And maybe the likes of golf and tennis aren't necessarily doing anymore, to say, but that's true. I love those sports, but that's what's happening. And esports it's not just it's day in the sun. It's here to stay. ESL's been doing this for 20 years, and very modest beginnings in internet cafes doing small LAN tournaments. It's gone straight.
I remember those.
Yeah. You do
that. Maybe Jonathan does as well.
Well, they were there, and we do things like shore up. It's a very heavily male watched and played sport in esports, but we're trying to shore up that demographic and having more women's tournaments and all those sorts of things. That there's lots of women gamers out there, especially on mobile, and it's exciting times for us in that space. So it's here to stay, and it's something I couldn't ignore when I was working at Fox Sports. That esports was just literally on the up, and it's going that way. So it's very strong.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I think what's interesting about this whole gaming space is that it's not, unlike if you look at sort of golf and football or golf, those are kind of separate entities, and you could say they've got nothing to do with each other. Whereas, the gaming and football or gaming, and as we know, obviously with racing, they're not mutually exclusive. Right. So there's a reason they tend to sit much more aligned to each other and coexist. Yeah. I think we'll continue to coexist, find ways of working much closer together than being completely sort of separate entities. Cara, on that note, you guys have kept your fans busy with virtual racing over this time. Where do you see the future of that going forward once your races resume? And then also you've just launched, just premiered Go Green, right, on your YouTube channel. So this, so the role of sort of behind the scenes and the content and getting people closer to what you're doing, in just sort of building out this capability that sits outside of your core live event, which in everything you guys are doing, it's a very set time. How important is that?
Yeah, so from an esports perspective, obviously, as I touched on, we did spend a lot of time and investment in terms of making sure that we delivered a quality product over the lockdown period. And I think we've seen a lot of early success on that front. So in addition to the product itself, we actually launched a partnership with UNICEF at the start of lockdown to help children who were affected by coronavirus. And we actually used that 8-week series to help fundraise for that initiative. So in addition to running the esports series, we were able to use it to engage that community to raise £100,000 for UNICEF. And I think in terms of the engagement levels, and Charlie's just touched on them, we've seen significant results in that space. We also have partnerships with Motorsport Manager, where our team fans can race in team liveries. And then we've developed a product with EA Sports around Real Racing 3, which actually launched across our social channels today. So we'd say that esports is definitely a big part of our future, and we'll continue to invest in that space. And then obviously to your point around And We Go Green, so it's been quite a busy lockdown period for us. We launched the And We Go Green documentary a couple of weeks ago now, and that was produced by the likes of Fisher Stevens and Leonardo DiCaprio, and it provided sort of a behind-the-scenes look at the making of Formula E, our sustainability efforts, and also showcased the unique personalities of our drivers. And we were quite lucky during lockdown to secure some really valuable placements with major broadcasters. So we had the likes of Hulu in the US, Channel 4 in the UK. We had a number of broadcasters across APAC, and then also supported it with a global release across our YouTube channels. We know that our fan base is really engaged with behind the scenes content and that sort of unique access. And we've probably seen that reflected in the growth across our channels. So in the last 18 months, we've seen sort of a 200% growth across YouTube. We've seen 150% growth in terms of followers across our social media channels. And it's really important for us as a business to continue to deliver content that's going to resonate with that fan base. I think we've seen rights holders doing it well at the moment, particularly with the likes of Formula One with their Netflix series. More recently, Chicago Bulls, obviously, with their Netflix series. And I think it's something that we will continue to look to invest in. And I think at Formula E, we're probably quite fortunate in terms of we have our own broadcasting team in-house. So they produce our race day broadcast, and also puts us in a fortunate position to be able to sort of create those authentic storytelling opportunities for our commercial partners. And I think definitely it's high on the agenda, and it's a huge priority for us moving forward.
I mean, thanks, Guy. I mean, you mentioned this just now, and obviously because of the issue with coronavirus, the environment of sustainability have been again sort of elevated as a subject matter, and particularly one that you could argue the young generation is particularly aligned with. All of us would probably agree that rights holders, whatever space you're in, are probably interested in attracting that younger generation and being able to align with them on this sort of on purpose and where you see us, where you are on that, in that space. How do you guys see your role? How do you see I mean, you're in a unique space because your entire organization was developed to address that particular, we'll say niche, but that particular topic. So how are you finding that? How are you finding that how do you see your partners helping you deliver that story?
Yeah, so essentially Formula E was developed to advance the adoption of electric vehicles in order to help fight climate change. So to your point, I think social purpose is at the heart of what we do. And I think as a result, we're able to attract a younger, more affluent and more socially optimistic audience. But I'd say there's a few other elements of our product that allow us to attract that audience, and that's probably due to affordability around our ticketing pricing, and that doesn't restrain people from being able to experience our events. And then I'd also say from an accessibility standpoint, where we actually host races in inner city streets as opposed to traditional race circuits. So people don't necessarily need to travel great distances to experience our product. And I think we're quite lucky to be able to take that product to the fan. And I think all of these elements sort of combine to allow us to reach that sort of hard to reach millennial audience who is particularly interested in social issues. And I think probably to your point around how partners support Formula E sustainability efforts, I'd say probably it's equally important for us to support brands in terms of facilitating that conversation with our audience, because we know that they're very willing and open to have those conversations. And I think particularly at this point in time, brands are being more and more challenged by consumers to be more active in the sustainability space. And it's probably, finding a platform where you can authentically have those conversations is sometimes difficult. And I think we're quite lucky from Formula E to be able to offer that to our partners and support our partners in terms of having those that open dialogue. And I think, we know our fans are more willing to purchase from brands that have an alignment with sustainability in terms of paying more for sustainably sourced products or supporting brands that align to their social beliefs. And I think we've seen brands really capitalize on that in terms of seeing meaningful shifts in terms of purchase intent and consideration as a result of their partnerships with Formula E. So I'd say it's definitely a huge opportunity for us in terms of facilitating those conversations, but I'd also say it's very much a collective effort in terms of having those positive outcomes on a sustainability front.
Yeah, interesting time. You guys are certainly in that space have a pretty unique position. Jonathan, what about yourself? What do you think when we look a bit broader in terms of the sporting landscape? So many changes, so much has changed in the last sort of 60 days compared to the last sort of 50 years. So what do you think, how do you think the sporting landscape will have evolved, particularly given that our audience here are, mostly sort of marketers and brands? And, what changes do you think that rights holders like yourselves will have to undergo or are continuing to do? You may have already started to do this to make sure that you come out of this remaining as relevant as ever for your commercial partners?
Yeah, well, I guess, we've still got some choppy waters to go through. We're certainly, not out of the woods yet. I think that, the good news is, you sort of mentioned that I've been around for a while. I joined the football club 2008. So round about the time, we were going through the economic crisis then. And I think if you look at some of the things that happened back then, obviously slightly different set of circumstances, but what is encouraging is in football in the Premier League, the media rights went to a whole new level. Domestic TV deal coming out of the economic crisis was phenomenal. So the signs are good. Certainly in football, the media rights shouldn't be affected too much. Obviously, we're heavily reliant on live audiences, and no idea when we're going to be able to have a crowd back at Anfield. I think everybody would agree that the product does lose something by not having fans there. Fans are everything.
Especially your fans, they're quite unique. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we want, when it's safe to do so.
It pains me to say that. I'm not a Liverpool fan, but I'm just going to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah. So we're having to think about. There's a couple of things, couple of trends that we're seeing, and taking what had been a physical experience into a digital experience. So a couple of examples of that. One of the big activations that we've done with AXA is an event called the COP Run. So we're delivering mass participation running events for AXA in Southeast Asia, all geared towards something that people are passionate about. People are passionate about LFC, but they're passionate about other things. They're passionate about running, and it's great for AXA because people feel good, mind and body. That's what they're looking for. So what we're developing is a digital version of that product. Last year or earlier on, last year we shut down the streets of Bangkok, had 8,000 people running. We're going to apply that to a digital product where people can still run, but do it individually and participate as a community, and that's going to give us far more reach. You look at some of the other products that we're developing. We've got a brand new digital match center. If people aren't able to get to the game, then we've really enhanced what we're doing on that front as well. So even if we can't do something physically, we're doing it digitally. And the other trend that we're seeing is that we're fortunate. We've got a huge audience. We've got a highly engaged audience. We're learning more and more about that audience. But a lot of what we're doing is around storytelling and purpose. And a lot of the great activation that's come out in the past year or two has been around great storytelling and really telling a story around purpose. So a lot of the activations have been around kindness, generosity, mental well-being, physical well-being. Obviously difficult to compete with Formula E from a sustainability perspective, but we're announcing a partnership tomorrow with an FMCG brand. Don't want to give too much away, but that is sustainability centric, and it's going to enable us to really tell a story about our sustainability credentials and help us become better corporate citizens. We're going to be committing to reducing our carbon footprint as a consequence of this partnership. So some really interesting, exciting developments on that front, and that's gonna continue.
That's exciting. Looking forward to hearing the news. And Charlie, look, I was going to ask if you think that the esports has now become properly mainstream, but I think I know the answer already. But now that I think it's probably safe to say that it has, particularly around the critical mass of engagement, plus the types of non-endemic brands that you are increasingly seeing in the gaming space. It's very much I think it's the whole industry's been even further validated if it needed to be. From an ESL perspective, and maybe even broader, I think a lot of people on this webinar would be interested to understand what is it about gaming, particularly as it relates to, we talk a lot about this, the millennials or the Gen Zs, the younger audience that's increasingly hard to reach. What's so special about your space, more broadly, maybe ESL in particular, that is quite unique in terms of being able to reach that audience?
I'd say that, okay, yes, you're right, absolutely right. It's these millennial Gen Zs that we call the unreachables, and then these millennials that are actively watching gaming throughout their lives, and there's even gamers coming back to gaming and esports that are up to our age and this of coming back to it and or having kids and then getting involved again. for them, certainly they're very digitally savvy. They're very tech savvy, digital natives that have 2, 3, 4, 5 devices. 2 or 3 screens that they consume their films on, their Netflix, their Amazon Prime, and their games. And they've got Spotify on in the background. They've got multiple devices. These guys just like, it's balmy, but that's how they spend their discretionary income. We know that it's been incredible influx of interest around from remote delivery, fast food and restaurants and brands that are coming to us to say these guys are all at home. Remote delivery, it's a race to the top for remote delivery. We know about that from the likes of Just Eat and take those Subways and those Pizza Huts and all those sorts of things that are coming in and demanding, especially from FMCG side, Jonathan. It's a space that they are now really taking big notice of, because these people shave, they need deodorant, most of them. They are, men and women are having consumables. They all need these FMCG products themselves, but they've been missed. The FMCGs of this world have spent their advertising and sponsorship funds around, big mainstream sports broadcasting, and it's not just about that. Twitch is huge, and it's not going anywhere. And so the advertising, that's why we have our media rights exclusively with Twitch, and it's a lot of spend out there that these marketers have got burning a hole in their pockets. That are right, okay, there's the Olympics isn't happening this year, and of course Euros got postponed and cancelled, and whatever's happening with that. Yes, they're all looking to 2021 now. So for 2021, it's very exciting because these people are at home or on the move and consuming gaming and esports day in, day out for long periods, hours at a time throughout a day, and then tuning in and tuning out and tuning back in again. So it's a frequent over churn of people that want to come back and watch the gaming where it's at, because our tournaments go on for weeks, but the finals usually happen the big grand finals usually happen over a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it's it's 8 to 10 hours at a time of that day that our partners and potential partners are realizing the hang time and dwell time of how their brand can interact with quite an exciting way. It's not just about badging. You've got to bring value to the that authentic value that you hear everyone talk about when it comes to esports, that engages. And what esports does is just rip up the rule book and say, well, how are we going to activate our partnership with DHL or Mercedes? Is it about integrating that they take over this like exclusive segment of our show that allows them to get their core business across and tick all the boxes for those strategic objectives, as well as make sure that the fans trust them and like them and the message and tone of voice is right. And that's why we work with our partners to make sure that it's on point, and that the gamers aren't going to go, what are you doing in our space? What are you doing here in esports? It's got to be in a really cool, fun, interactive way that they get over the fact that, well, you're lucky, Vodafone, to be in our esports gaming space, and we're really glad that you are making an effort to engage with us and sell to us and advertise there. So it's very poignant, and we found that no more, of course, than with DHL, and the fans just took to it, and it's really exciting, and we're going to do that for more partners. And for 2021, it's really exciting. So yeah, it's a part of just engaging with that huge demographic that just historically may have been ignored by potential market spenders and all that sort of things.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I have to say, for having followed the space very closely for the last couple of years, I think some of the most interesting and innovative activations or executions I've seen have happened in that world. I mean, it's this constant sort of innovation and pushing the boundaries, and whether that's a concert being hosted inside the game, but this idea of kind of merging the real world and the virtual world has been really interesting to watch. And I think we're only scratching the surface.
Definitely.
I think we'll see, I could see, a football club collaborating with a game and sort of having short launches things that we perhaps might seem a bit far-fetched even maybe 12, 18 months ago, which would become pretty common pretty soon as we look at different ways to reach a different audience, to again sort of be innovative and push the boundaries. And gaming allows you. I think gaming allows you to do that. I've particularly found it interesting in the luxury space. There's how many you went from sort of Red Bulls to like Louis Vuittons in a space of sort of 12 months. So fascinating to follow.
And that goes across the car sector, of course, Mercedes, but it's a sector where you do see the likes of Louis Vuitton going, right, we're going to be the official trophy case of the Legends esports, and you're like, wow, okay, that's great. And as whether it's ESL or Riot Games or whoever sort of owns the rights or games on that side, we want to work, we want to see success in this category and in this industry. So that's why we love seeing the fact that Formula E and F1 and football clubs. We work with football clubs for their own events that they want to do. And we were going to be hosting and running the Euros, which was going to run concurrently and in parallel with the European Championships in July.
Well, next summer then.
So it could have happened, but I don't think it would have been quite the same. It would have just been a very quiet Wembley Stadium, and we would have been there at Wembley and running the Euros, which was really exciting. But maybe not, maybe next time. So it was, but we work in football, and there's lots of opportunities there, and it's certainly the first sport that people think of when it comes to esports. When it comes to do you do FIFA, or do you do motorsport games, or whatever it might be, we do all of it. And it's just a question of what the objective is for the brand or the rights holder, or for a football club, or what do they want to get across. And we all face the same sort of challenges when it comes to what we're going to deliver for our partners. We've just got to collaborate closely together to say how we're going to get to that, and what's going to be so differently done in esports that maybe you're a bit harnessed by or hampered by, when it might be a live football game that might not be possible. But it's all possible.
Right. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how that evolves. Fascinating space. I don't see any questions that have popped up in the sidebar here. But if anyone does have any questions, now is the time to turn on your camera and your microphone. If you'd like to ask any of the panelists a question, now is a good time to do so. If anyone has one. If not, then I'd like to finish up just a quick round, 1 minute. I want to put a question to all of you in terms of your, if you can give one prediction coming out of this, going forward, coming out of COVID, what's it going to be? Again, if trying to think about the audience, we've got people who are working with clients or clients or brands already. So what is your prediction coming out of this? Let's start with you, Jonathan.
Wow. So I think that one of the big things that we're just starting to see, that I think we'll see a hell of a lot more of, is footballers and athletes driving societal change. We've obviously, everybody's seen what Marcus Rashford has accomplished in the past couple of weeks. You're seeing Gillette and Raheem Sterling doing some great stuff with their above the line. If anyone gets a chance, go on Rakuten and check out the Sadio Mane documentary. What he's done in his hometown in Senegal is phenomenal. And a lot of these players, it's not like this is good community and charitable activities happened overnight. These guys have been doing incredible things for years and years and years, devoting their time, their finances to lots of great causes. And I think it's only really now that we're starting to see that their voices are really starting to be heard, and I think that they can really make a change during these really difficult times. We need these guys right now, and it's incumbent on us as a club to really help on that front and help our partners take advantage and get value from it.
Yeah, great point. Cara, how about yourself? What do you think if you could leave us with one thought what would it be?
Yeah, well, I would probably tend to agree with Jonathan's point on this. And I'd say, particularly now more than ever, sport's a very powerful platform for change. And I think I've seen it firsthand in terms of working at Formula E and social purpose being at the heart of what we do. And I would recognise that we have a really powerful vehicle to help fight climate change. But I'd say, and Jonathan touched on it earlier with his sustainability efforts at Liverpool, I think sport more broadly provides brands a really clear opportunity to connect with consumers through their passion points, and it's a time when they're particularly engaged. And it would be great to see brands, particularly at this point in time, engaging with fans in that way to have a long-term meaningful effect on society. And I think it'd be great to see brands sort of diversifying some of that marketing spend to have sort of a long-term lasting impact.
Yeah, great point. Great point. And Charlie, how about yourself? What do you think? One prediction coming out of this.
Well, I just had to mute some loud children then. It was, I think if from an events perspective, it's still quite an unknown entity for us from an event management perspective. I think, and I was talking with a friend about this the other day, and it's for outdoor arenas, we'll see them probably sooner, like the likes of football where it is open air, and certainly with Formula E and Formula One where those races are open and open air, enclosed stadiums where we have those sorts of things. I don't think we're going to see that as soon. So we've got to be able to adapt to that, and certainly with esports, we've got the digital audiences to make sure that we have the presence online and the capturing of sponsorships working harder for themselves. But it's certainly going to be, I think, a big test for rights holders when it comes to being able to have audiences in a live event again. And we hope that comes sooner than later. But it's going to be whatever people can deliver, that everyone who's on this webinar, of what can we deliver online from a digital experience, and how do we raise the bar for that to, if God forbid COVID-19 happens, again, then what's our plan B? And everyone's got to be ready for that. So my big prediction is that people will have to adapt and be ready for the next big whatever it might be. We can't see the future, so I think that'll be to how can we take our property and make it available to everybody, that it might be, no, it's not in a big stadium or in a big circuit, but what's the alternative, and let's be ready for it.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think just to sum up, I think what's really fascinating hearing all of your perspectives, and I think what one thing that's clear to me, it's become clear to me over the time, and particularly over the last couple of weeks as sport returned, is that I think whilst it may be in a different form, and particularly in the short term, how we experience sport, but the power of sport and the impact of sport and the platform that sport provides to commercial partners is perhaps unrivaled. The ability to reach people, to engage with people in an environment, in a very unique environment, and obviously with all this sort of with this evolution of digital, the ability to do that and continuously deliver that, deliver for partners is going to happen. But certainly the appetite for sport in whatever form hasn't diminished, perhaps only increased. We've seen record numbers as leagues have come back, whether it's Bundesliga or the Premier League. So thank you, all of you. Thanks, Cara. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Jonathan, for your time this afternoon, for a great discussion. And thanks to everyone who tuned in and give us an hour of their time. This will be edited. It will be shared. So if there's any of this that you'd like to see again or share, we'll be sending out a link to the session in over the course of the next week. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thanks, Misha.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. See ya.